What if I told you that the chaotic world of Quahog, Rhode Island, holds some of the most intricate storytelling mysteries hidden in plain sight? Tonight, we're diving deep into the sprawling universe of Family Guy, uncovering the hidden lore, forgotten storylines, and interconnected mysteries that make this animated sitcom far more complex than most people realize. So get comfortable, dim those lights, and let me take you on a gentle journey through the surprisingly rich mythology of the Griffin family and their bizarre little town. Let's start with something that might surprise you. Family Guy isn't just a collection of random cutaway gags and crude humor. Beneath all the chaos lies a carefully constructed universe with its own internal logic, recurring themes, and surprisingly deep character development that spans over 2 decades of storytelling. The show has created an entire ecosystem of characters, locations, and running narratives that interweave in ways that become apparent only when you step back and look at the bigger picture. Consider the Griffin family home itself. That modest 2-story house at 31 Spooner Street has witnessed countless adventures, but it's also a character in its own right. The house has its own history, its own secrets, and its own role in the family's story. We've seen glimpses of its past through various episodes, learning about previous owners and the strange events that have occurred within its walls. The basement has served as everything from a secret laboratory to a tornado shelter, while the attic holds forgotten memories and mysterious artifacts from the family's past. Peter Griffin, the family patriarch, represents something far more complex than the typical bumbling father figure. His character arc across hundreds of episodes reveals a man struggling with responsibility, identity, and his place in the world. His various jobs throughout the series aren't just random plot devices, they're explorations of the American, working-class experience. From his time at the toy factory, to his stint as a fisherman, from his brief career as a bodyguard, to his adventures in television production. Peter's employment history tells a story about economic uncertainty and the changing nature of work in modern America. The relationship between Peter and his father-in-law, Carter Pewterschmidt, opens up entire storylines about class, wealth, and family dynamics. Carter represents old money, established power, and traditional values, while Peter embodies working-class sensibilities and anti-establishment attitudes. Their ongoing conflict reflects broader cultural tensions about privilege, success, and what it means to be a man in contemporary society. The episodes focusing on their relationship often reveal deeper truths about both characters, showing us sides of Peter we rarely see, and humanizing Carter beyond his role as the wealthy antagonist. Lois Griffin's character development represents one of the show's most subtle long-term storytelling achievements. Initially presented as the patient, long-suffering wife, Lois has evolved into a complex character with her own ambitions, frustrations, and moral complexities. Her musical background, her brief career as a model, her struggles with motherhood, and her occasional dark turns all contribute to a character portrait that's far richer than it appears on the surface. The episodes that focus on Lois often explore themes of unfulfilled potential, the sacrifices women make for family, and the tension between personal desires and social expectations. The children of the Griffin family each represent different aspects of growing up in modern America. Meg's role as the family scapegoat initially seems cruel, but viewed through a longer lens, her character arc becomes a meditation on adolescence, social acceptance, and finding one's place in the world. Her various attempts to fit in, her brief moments of triumph, and her resilience in the face of constant rejection tell a story about teenage life that's both exaggerated and surprisingly authentic. The episodes where Meg finally stands up for herself or finds temporary happiness hit differently when you understand the full context of her journey. Chris Griffin's character explores themes of masculinity, creativity, and coming of age. His artistic talents, his awkward social interactions, and his relationship with his father create a narrative about growing up different in a world that values conformity. The episodes that focus on Chris often deal with sensitive topics like bullying, self-expression, and the pressure to live up to expectations. His friendship with Herbert, the elderly neighbor, creates uncomfortable comedy, but also touches on themes of loneliness and the generation gap. Then there's Stewie Griffin, perhaps the most complex character in the entire series. His evolution from would-be world conqueror to sophisticated intellectual represents one of the most significant character developments in animated television. Stewie's relationship with Brian, his adventures through time and space, and his gradual coming to terms with his own identity create storylines that are simultaneously hilarious and surprisingly moving. The episodes that focus on Stewie often push the boundaries of what's possible in the Family Guy universe, introducing science fiction elements, philosophical discussions, and emotional depth that contrasts sharply with the show's typical tone. Brian Griffin serves as the show's moral center and intellectual conscience, but he's also deeply flawed in ways that make him more human than many actual human characters. His struggles with alcoholism, his pretentious intellectual posturing, his complicated romantic relationships, and his role as the family's voice of reason create a character who's simultaneously admirable and infuriating. The episodes that explore Brian's background, his relationship with his own identity as a talking dog, and his place in human society often serve as vehicles for social commentary and philosophical exploration. The town of Quahog itself is a character worthy of deep exploration. This fictional Rhode Island community has its own ecosystem of recurring characters, local institutions, and cultural traditions. The Drunken Clam serves as more than just Peter's favorite bar. It's a gathering place where working-class philosophy gets hashed out over beer and conversation. Jerome, the bartender, represents stability and wisdom in a world of chaos. The regular patrons each have their own stories and perspectives that contribute to the show's exploration of community and belonging. Quahog's local government, represented by Mayor Adam West, creates storylines that satirize American politics while also celebrating the absurdity of civic life. Mayor West's bizarre policies, his strange obsessions, and his genuine care for his constituents create a character who's simultaneously incompetent and oddly effective. The episodes dealing with local politics often reveal truths about democracy, leadership, and the relationship between citizens and their government. The show's approach to religion and spirituality, primarily explored through the Griffin family's relationship with their local church and various religious figures, creates ongoing narratives about faith, morality, and community. These storylines often challenge both religious orthodoxy and secular assumptions, creating space for nuanced discussions about belief and practice in modern American life. Family Guy's use of cutaway gags isn't just random humor, it's a storytelling technique that allows the show to explore ideas and scenarios that wouldn't fit into the main narrative. These brief vignettes often comment on historical events, pop culture phenomena, and social issues in ways that are both entertaining and insightful. The cumulative effect of hundreds of these cutaways creates a comprehensive commentary on American culture and society. The show's relationship with popular culture goes beyond simple parody. The various celebrity appearances, pop culture references, and media satires create a running commentary on fame, entertainment, and the role of media in modern life. Episodes that focus on Peter's brief brush with celebrity or Brian's attempts at literary fame explore themes about success, authenticity, and the price of public recognition. The recurring characters in Family Guy's universe each contribute to the show's exploration of different aspects of American life. Glenn Quagmire represents unchecked masculinity and sexual liberation, but episodes that delve deeper into his character reveal a more complex individual struggling with his own demons and desires. Cleveland Brown's friendship with Peter and his eventual move to his own spin-off series created storylines about race, friendship, and community that the show handled with surprising sensitivity. The show's treatment of disability, primarily through the character of Joe Swanson, creates ongoing narratives about resilience, adaptation, and the challenges faced by people with disabilities in American society. Joe's character development over the series shows him as a fully realized individual whose disability is just one aspect of his identity, not its defining characteristic. Family Guy's exploration of family dynamics extends beyond the immediate Griffin household to include the extended family members who appear throughout the series. Peter's relationship with his father Mickey, Lois's complex feelings about her parents, and the various relatives who drift in and out of episodes create a broader picture of how families function, dysfunction, and evolve over time. The show's handling of death and mortality, from the controversial killing and resurrection of Brian to the various deaths of minor characters throughout the series, creates ongoing meditations on loss, grief, and the meaning of life. These episodes often reveal the deep emotional connections between characters that might not be apparent in more comedic episodes. The science fiction elements that creep into Family Guy through Stewie's inventions and time travel adventures create opportunities for the show to explore philosophical questions about destiny, free will, and the nature of reality. The episodes dealing with alternate timelines and parallel universes suggest that the Family Guy universe is far more complex and interconnected than it initially appears. The show's treatment of education, primarily through the various school episodes and Chris and Meg's academic experiences, creates commentary on the American educational system, social hierarchies among young people, and the challenges of growing up in contemporary society. These storylines often reveal the ways that institutional structures both support and fail young people. Family Guy's exploration of work and economic life through Peter's various jobs and the family's financial struggles creates ongoing commentary about class, opportunity, and the American dream. The episodes that focus on economic hardship often reveal the ways that financial stress affects family relationships and individual well-being. The show's approach to mental health, explored through various characters' psychological struggles and Brian's role as unofficial family therapist, creates space for discussions about depression, anxiety, and the importance of mental health care. These storylines often handle serious topics with both humor and genuine sensitivity. As we wrap up this journey through the hidden depths of Family Guy's universe, it's worth noting that this exploration only scratches the surface of the rich storytelling possibilities contained within this seemingly simple animated comedy. The show's ability to balance crude humor with genuine emotional depth, social commentary with pure entertainment, and chaos with carefully constructed narrative arcs makes it a unique achievement in television comedy. The next time you watch an episode of Family Guy, try looking beyond the surface humor to see the deeper stories being told. Notice how character relationships evolve over time, how running gags develop new meanings in different contexts, and how the show uses its absurdist elements to explore very real human experiences and social issues. Sweet dreams, and remember that sometimes the most profound truths are hidden in the most unexpected places, even in the chaotic world of Quahog, Rhode Island. What if I told you that the seemingly random chaos of Family Guy actually contains one of the most intricate and bizarre mythologies in television history? Tonight, we're diving deep into the strange, interconnected world of Quahog, where time travel, multiverse theory, and ancient conspiracies all exist within what most people think is just a simple comedy show. So grab your favorite blanket, dim the lights, and let me guide you through the surprisingly complex lore of Family Guy that will have your mind wandering as you drift off to sleep. You know that feeling when you're watching Family Guy and suddenly realize that what seemed like a throwaway gag from Season 3 somehow connects to a major plot point in Season 15? That's not an accident. The writers have been weaving an elaborate tapestry of continuity that most viewers never even notice. But once you start paying attention, you'll see that every cutaway gag, every random flashback, and every seemingly nonsensical moment is actually part of a much larger story. Let's start with something that might surprise you. Peter Griffin isn't just a bumbling father figure. He's actually descended from a long line of historically significant troublemakers. We've seen his ancestors throughout various time periods, and there's a pattern that emerges. The Griffin bloodline has been consistently disrupting major historical events for centuries. From medieval times to the Wild West, from the Revolutionary War to World War II, there's always been a Griffin somewhere causing chaos at pivotal moments in history. But here's where it gets really interesting. These aren't just random coincidences or simple gags for historical episodes. The show has established that the Griffin family exists in a temporal loop where their actions in the past directly influence their present circumstances. Remember when Peter traveled back in time and accidentally prevented the American Revolution? The ripple effects of that single action created an entirely different timeline where the Griffins lived under British rule. This suggests that the Griffin family exists as a kind of temporal anchor point, a family whose actions echo across time itself. Now let's talk about Stewie, because his story is far more complex than most people realize. Yes, he's a baby with advanced intelligence and a time machine, but the implications go much deeper. Stewie represents something unprecedented in human evolution. His intelligence isn't just advanced for a baby, it's advanced for humanity as a whole. He's essentially a post-human being trapped in an infant's body, which explains his constant frustration with the limitations of his physical form. The time machine isn't just a convenient plot device either. Stewie's relationship with time travel reveals something profound about the nature of destiny in the Family Guy universe. Every time he attempts to change major events, the universe seems to course-correct itself. This suggests that certain events are fixed points in time, and the Griffin family's role in history is one of those unchangeable constants. Stewie's time machine becomes less of a tool for changing the past and more of a window for understanding the predetermined nature of his family's fate. But Stewie's sexuality and his relationship with Brian opens up another layer of the mythology. Their adventures together through time and space aren't just buddy comedy escapades. They represent the classic pairing of intellect and wisdom, youth and experience, ambition and acceptance. Stewie's gradual acceptance of his own identity parallels his growing understanding of his place in the cosmic order of things. Brian, meanwhile, serves as the show's philosophical anchor. He's not just a talking dog with human characteristics. He represents the voice of reason in a world that has abandoned logic entirely. His alcoholism, his failed writing career, his complicated romantic relationships, they all serve a purpose. In the larger narrative, Brian is essentially the Greek chorus of Family Guy, commenting on the absurdity around him while being equally absurd himself. The dog's intellectual pretensions aren't character flaws. They're survival mechanisms. In a universe where chaos reigns supreme and logical consequences rarely apply, Brian maintains his sanity by clinging to intellectual pursuits and artistic ambitions. His constant failures in these areas aren't meant to mock intellectualism. They're meant to show how difficult it is to maintain rational thought in an irrational world. And then there's the question of why Brian can talk in the first place. The show has never provided a definitive explanation, but the evidence suggests something far more significant than a simple cartoon convention. Brian's intelligence and speech patterns indicate that he might be the result of some kind of experiment or evolutionary leap. His relationship with the Griffin family isn't coincidental, it's symbiotic. They need his rationality to ground their chaos, and he needs their acceptance to validate his existence. Let's shift our focus to the town of Quahog itself, because the setting is just as important as the characters. Quahog, Rhode Island, is presented as a typical American town, but it's actually a nexus point for supernatural and extraordinary events. Think about how many bizarre incidents occur in this one small town. Alien invasions, time travelers, parallel dimensions, ancient curses, superhero battles, the list goes on and on. This isn't just because it's a cartoon where anything can happen. Quahog exists as a kind of soft spot in reality where the normal rules don't apply. The town's history is filled with references to occult practices, mysterious disappearances, and unexplained phenomena. The founding families of Quahog weren't just ordinary settlers. They were practitioners of strange rituals and keepers of ancient secrets. The Pewterschmidt family, Lois's relatives, play a crucial role in this hidden history. They're not just wealthy socialites with old money. They're descendants of a secret society that has been manipulating events from behind the scenes for generations. Francis Pewterschmidt's vast fortune isn't just the result of good investments and business acumen. It's built on knowledge of future events and manipulation of historical outcomes. This explains why Lois, despite coming from such a refined background, chose to marry someone like Peter. It wasn't just rebellion against her upbringing. She was fulfilling her role in a predetermined pattern that her family has been orchestrating for decades. The Pewterschmidts needed the chaos that the Griffin bloodline represents, and the Griffins needed the resources and connections that the Pewterschmidts provide. Meg's place in this family dynamic is particularly tragic when you understand the deeper mythology. She's not just the family scapegoat because she's awkward and unpopular. She represents the potential for breaking the cycle that has trapped both family lines for generations. Her outsider status, her rejection by both families, her struggle to find her own identity, these all position her as the one Griffin who might escape the predetermined pattern. But the universe actively works against her attempts at independence. Every time Meg tries to establish her own path, circumstances conspire to pull her back into the family dysfunction. This isn't just bad luck or poor writing. It's the cosmic forces that govern the Griffin family mythology asserting themselves to maintain the status quo. Chris, on the other hand, represents pure potential corrupted by circumstance. His artistic talents and creative intelligence could have developed into something extraordinary, but the family environment and the town's supernatural influence stunts his growth. He's essentially a Griffin who could have transcended the family pattern if he'd been raised elsewhere, but Quahog's reality-warping properties keep him locked in adolescent stagnation. The show's treatment of death and resurrection reveals another crucial aspect of the mythology. Characters die and return to life with surprising frequency. But this isn't just cartoon physics at work. The Griffin family exists in a universe where death isn't permanent, because their roles in the cosmic order are too important to leave vacant for long. When Brian died and was replaced by Vinny, the universe itself seemed to reject this change. The overwhelming fan reaction wasn't just audience preference. It was the collective unconscious recognizing that something fundamental had been disrupted. Brian's eventual return wasn't just fan service. It was the universe course-correcting itself to maintain the proper balance of forces. This concept of cosmic balance extends to all the characters' relationships and conflicts. Peter's constant feuds with the giant chicken, Ernie, aren't just elaborate fight sequences for comedic effect. They represent the eternal struggle between order and chaos, with Peter as the agent of disruption and the chicken as the force trying to restore stability. Their battles are essentially cosmic events disguised as slapstick comedy. The show's frequent breaks into musical numbers serve a similar purpose. These aren't just entertainment value or parody of other shows. Music in the Family Guy universe functions as a kind of reality-altering force. When characters break into song, they're tapping into a fundamental frequency that shapes the nature of their reality. The most elaborate musical sequences often precede or follow major shifts in the characters' circumstances or relationships. Cleveland's departure and return to the show illustrates this principle perfectly. His move to Virginia wasn't just a setup for a spin-off series. Cleveland represents stability and voice of reason within Peter's friend group. His absence created an imbalance that affected the entire dynamic of the show. When he returned, bringing with him experiences and perspectives from his time away, he brought new harmony to the group's chemistry. The relationship between Family Guy and its sister shows, American Dad and The Cleveland Show, reveals another layer of the mythology. These aren't separate universes. They're parallel dimensions within the same cosmic framework. The occasional crossovers and references between shows aren't just promotional gimmicks. They're glimpses into the interconnected nature of this animated reality. Stan Smith's CIA connections and Roger's alien origins in American Dad represent the government and extraterrestrial aspects of this shared universe. Cleveland's experiences in Virginia and his eventual return tie together the domestic and community elements. All three shows explore different facets of the same underlying themes about family, identity, and the struggle to maintain humanity in an increasingly absurd world. The show's relationship with pop culture goes beyond simple parody and reference. Family Guy exists in a universe where fictional characters and real people coexist and interact regularly. This isn't just celebrity cameos or movie references. It's evidence that the boundaries between reality and fiction are fluid in this cosmology. The characters' frequent interactions with celebrities and fictional characters suggest that they exist at the intersection point between the real world and the world of entertainment. This explains why the show can seamlessly blend references to classic literature, contemporary movies, historical figures, and original characters, all within the same episode. The Griffin family doesn't just live in a world influenced by pop culture. They live in a world where pop culture and reality merge and separate according to narrative needs. The cutaway gags serve a crucial function in this mythology. They're not just random jokes or digressions from the main plot. Each cutaway represents a glimpse into an alternate timeline or parallel dimension where things played out differently. When Peter says something reminds him of the time he did something completely unrelated, he's not just making a non sequitur. He's accessing memories from his alternate dimensional selves. This interpretation explains why the cutaway gags often feature the characters in completely different historical periods, professions, or circumstances. These aren't fantasies or exaggerations, they're actual experiences from versions of themselves in parallel realities. The Griffin family's consciousness apparently extends across multiple dimensions, giving them access to memories and experiences from their alternate selves. The show's frequent references to its own production, fourth wall breaks, and meta-commentary aren't just postmodern humor techniques. They represent moments when the characters become aware of their fictional nature and their role in entertaining an audience. These moments of self-awareness suggest that the characters exist simultaneously as fictional constructs and as conscious beings aware of their constructed reality. This dual existence explains many of the show's apparent inconsistencies and contradictions. The characters can simultaneously be unaware cartoon figures following script directions and self-aware beings commenting on their own fictional status. They exist in a state of quantum superposition between fiction and reality, which allows them to function as both entertainment and commentary on entertainment itself. As we near the end of our journey through Family Guy's hidden mythology, it's worth considering what all of this complexity and interconnectedness means for us as viewers. The show operates on multiple levels simultaneously, providing surface-level entertainment while encoding deeper messages about family, society, and the nature of reality itself. The chaos and absurdity that define the Griffin family's existence mirror our own struggles to find meaning and connection in an increasingly chaotic world. The enduring popularity of Family Guy, despite its controversial content and seemingly random humor, suggests that audiences respond to something deeper than just the surface-level comedy. We're drawn to the Griffin family because they represent an exaggerated version of our own family dynamics, our own struggles with identity and belonging, our own attempts to maintain relationships in the face of constant absurdity. So as you drift off to sleep tonight, remember that behind all the crude humor and outrageous situations, Family Guy tells a story about the persistence of family bonds across time and space, the power of love to overcome chaos, and the possibility that even in a universe governed by randomness and absurdity, there might still be an underlying pattern that gives meaning to our existence. Sweet dreams, and may your own family mythology be slightly less complicated than the Griffins. Have you ever wondered why Family Guy was actually canceled twice before becoming one of the most successful animated shows in television history? Or why Seth MacFarlane almost died in the September 11th attacks, but a twist of fate involving a hangover literally saved his life? Today we're diving deep into the hidden world of Family Guy lore that will completely change how you watch this iconic show. Most people think they know everything about the Griffin family, but the truth is, there are layers of secrets, controversies, and mind-blowing, behind-the-scenes stories that Fox never wanted you to discover. From voice actors who were replaced without anyone noticing, to episodes that were banned from ever airing again, we're about to uncover the most shocking Family Guy secrets that have been hiding in plain sight for over 2 decades. But first, let me blow your mind with something that happened before the show even premiered. Seth MacFarlane was supposed to be on American Airlines Flight 11 on September 11, 2001, the same flight that crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. He had a ticket, his bags were packed, and he should have been on that plane. But here's the crazy part that nobody talks about. He overslept because he was hungover from a party the night before. That hangover literally saved his life and changed the entire trajectory of television comedy. Think about it for a second. If MacFarlane had made that flight, there would be no Family Guy, no American Dad, no The Orville, no billion-dollar animation empire. One night of partying in 2001 accidentally preserved one of the most influential creators in modern entertainment. But that's just the beginning of how strange and interconnected the Family Guy universe really gets. Let's start with something that will mess with your head every time you watch the show from now on. Mila Kunis, the voice of Meg Griffin, was only 14 years old when she started voicing the character. 14. She literally grew up recording in that booth, and her voice changing during puberty became part of Meg's character development. But here's the part that's even more insane. She lied about her age to get the job. When Kunis auditioned, she told the casting directors she was 18. She figured by the time they found out the truth, she'd already be established in the role. Her gamble paid off, but it created a bizarre situation where a teenage girl was voicing sexual jokes in adult situations that she wasn't even old enough to fully understand. The writers had to be careful about what lines they gave Meg because they had a minor in the recording booth. Speaking of voice acting mysteries, here's something that will make you question everything you think you know about the show's consistency. Phyllis Diller, the legendary comedian, was originally supposed to be the voice of Peter's mother, Thelma Griffin. She recorded several episodes worth of dialogue before the creators decided to kill off the character and replace her with Alex Borstein voicing Peter's new mother-in-law, Barbara Pewterschmidt. But the weirdest part isn't that they changed voice actors, it's that they kept some of Phyllis Diller's recorded lines and mixed them with Alex Borstein's voice work in certain episodes. If you listen carefully to some of the early season episodes, you can actually hear the subtle differences in vocal tone and delivery that reveal this hidden voice actor swap that most fans never noticed. Now let's talk about the episode that almost destroyed Family Guy before it even became successful. The episode called When You Wish Upon a Weinstein was considered so controversial that it was pulled from Fox's lineup and didn't air until years later on Cartoon Network. The episode dealt with Peter wanting his family to convert to Judaism because he believed Jewish people were naturally good with money. The controversy wasn't just about the content, it was about the timing. This episode was supposed to air just months after the September 11th attacks, when religious tensions were at an all-time high. Fox executives were terrified that the episode would spark protests, boycotts, and potentially violent reactions. They locked the episode away and pretended it didn't exist for nearly 3 years. But here's what makes this story even more complex. Seth MacFarlane fought tooth and nail to get the episode aired because he believed it was actually pro-Jewish and was celebrating Jewish culture rather than mocking it. He felt that Fox was being cowardly and missing the point of the satire entirely. The battle over this one episode created a rift between MacFarlane and Fox executives that influenced how the show was handled for years afterward. This brings us to one of the most shocking secrets in Family Guy history. The show was actually canceled twice, and both times it came back from the dead through pure accident. The first cancellation happened after season 2, because Fox executives thought the show was too expensive to produce and wasn't attracting the right demographic. They wanted younger viewers, but Family Guy was primarily watched by college students and adults. Here's where it gets interesting. After the cancellation, Cartoon Network picked up the reruns and started airing them late at night. The show found its audience in this late-night slot, with viewers who were exactly the demographic Fox had been trying to reach. College students would come home from parties and watch Family Guy marathons until sunrise. The show became a cultural phenomenon through syndication, something that had never happened before with an animated series. The DVD sales were equally shocking. The first season DVD became one of the best-selling television DVDs of all time, outselling many major Hollywood movies. Fox executives couldn't ignore the numbers anymore. They had accidentally created a gold mine and then thrown it away. The revival of Family Guy after its first cancellation changed how television networks think about syndication and DVD sales forever. But the second cancellation is even more bizarre. After bringing the show back, Fox canceled it again after season 4 because they claimed it wasn't performing well in its Sunday night time slot. What they didn't tell anyone was that they were deliberately sabotaging the show by moving it around the schedule constantly. Some episodes aired on different nights without any promotion, making it nearly impossible for fans to keep track of when new episodes were airing. Seth MacFarlane was so frustrated with Fox's treatment of the show that he seriously considered moving Family Guy to a different network entirely. Comedy Central and Cartoon Network both made offers to pick up the series, which would have been unprecedented at the time. The idea of a major animated series switching networks mid-run had never happened before. What saved Family Guy the second time wasn't fan campaigns or DVD sales. It was the iTunes revolution. When Family Guy episodes became available for digital purchase, they consistently ranked as some of the most downloaded television content. Fox suddenly realized they had a digital gold mine on their hands and brought the show back for a third time. Now let's dive into some character secrets that will change how you see the Griffin family forever. Brian Griffin, the talking dog, was originally supposed to be much more of a background character. Seth MacFarlane voices Brian himself, and the character was initially just meant to provide occasional witty commentary. But MacFarlane found that Brian's voice came so naturally to him that he started writing more and more scenes for the character. Here's the mind-bending part. Brian Griffin is essentially Seth MacFarlane's alter ego. Almost every political opinion, cultural reference, and intellectual observation that comes out of Brian's mouth reflects MacFarlane's actual views. When Brian goes on rants about politics, religion, or social issues, you're literally hearing Seth MacFarlane's personal opinions filtered through a cartoon dog character. This became controversial when fans started to notice that Brian was becoming increasingly preachy and self-righteous in later seasons. Critics accused MacFarlane of using the character as a mouthpiece for his liberal political views, turning Family Guy into a platform for his personal agenda. The backlash became so intense that MacFarlane actually killed off Brian in a shocking episode, only to bring him back a few episodes later after massive fan outrage. But the Brian death episode reveals something even more interesting about how Family Guy operates behind the scenes. The writers had been planning Brian's temporary death for over a year, and they deliberately leaked fake spoilers to throw fans off the scent. They created elaborate fake scripts and even recorded fake voice acting sessions to maintain the secrecy of their plan. Stewie Griffin presents another layer of hidden complexity that most viewers completely miss. The character was originally designed to be a one-dimensional villain baby who wanted to kill his mother and take over the world. But as the show evolved, Stewie became more complex, and his sexuality became a subject of constant speculation and debate. Seth MacFarlane has given contradictory statements about Stewie's sexual orientation over the years, sometimes saying the character is gay, sometimes saying he's too young for sexuality to matter, and sometimes saying it's deliberately ambiguous. But here's what most people don't know. There are actually two different versions of Stewie, depending on who he's interacting with. When Stewie talks to Brian, he's portrayed as intelligent, sophisticated, and possibly gay. When he interacts with his family members, he's more like a regular baby with occasional moments of evil genius behavior. This isn't accidental. It's a deliberate, creative choice that reflects how different people see us differently in various relationships and contexts. The Stewie and Brian dynamic became so popular that entire episodes started focusing exclusively on their adventures together. These episodes, often called road trip episodes by fans, consistently rank among the most popular Family Guy episodes of all time. The chemistry between Seth MacFarlane's two most personal character voices created some of the show's most memorable moments. Let's talk about the celebrity guest stars and the shocking stories behind their appearances. When Drew Barrymore appeared on the show, she was going through a particularly difficult period in her personal life. The recording session was supposed to take 2 hours, but she stayed for 6 hours because she was having so much fun with the cast and crew. She later said that working on Family Guy was therapeutic during a time when she was struggling with addiction issues. But the most surprising celebrity appearance almost never happened. Patrick Stewart, who voices Susie Swanson, initially turned down the role because he thought the show was too crude and beneath his classical theater background. It was only after his agent convinced him to watch several episodes that he realized the show's intelligence hidden beneath its seemingly juvenile humor. Stewart became so invested in the character that he started suggesting storylines and character developments for Susie. He even offered to voice additional characters for free because he enjoyed the creative process so much. His enthusiasm for the show shocked many of his colleagues in classical theater who couldn't understand why a Shakespearean actor would want to be associated with Family Guy. The show's relationship with censorship creates another layer of hidden stories that most fans never hear about. There's an entire archive of Family Guy jokes, scenes, and episodes that were deemed too controversial to ever air. Some of these involve real celebrities who threatened legal action, while others were considered too offensive even for Family Guy's notoriously boundary-pushing standards. One particular episode that was completely scrapped dealt with Lois having an affair with a character based on a real-life politician. The episode was fully animated and voice recorded before Fox executives realized the potential legal and political ramifications. The entire episode was locked away and will likely never see the light of day. But perhaps the most fascinating aspect of Family Guy lore involves the show's influence on other animated series. South Park creators Trey Parker and Matt Stone have had a long-running feud with Seth MacFarlane, claiming that Family Guy relies too heavily on random pop culture references instead of actual jokes. This feud played out in several South Park episodes that directly mocked Family Guy's writing style. The rivalry became so intense that it actually influenced how both shows developed their comedy. Family Guy started incorporating more story-driven humor to counter South Park's criticism, while South Park began using more visual gags and pop culture references to prove they could do Family Guy's style better than Family Guy itself. Here's something that will completely change how you watch Family Guy cutaway gags from now on. Those random flashback scenes that seem completely disconnected from the main plot? Many of them are actually recycled jokes from Seth MacFarlane's college animation projects and failed pilot episodes. The writers have been mining MacFarlane's old material for decades, updating and reworking jokes that were originally created in the 1,990 seconds. Some of the most popular Family Guy moments are actually 20-year-old jokes that have been given new animation and context. The peanut butter jelly time sequence, one of the show's most famous moments, was based on an internet meme that MacFarlane had been wanting to incorporate into his work for years before Family Guy even existed. As Family Guy approaches its 25th season, these hidden stories and secret histories continue to shape how the show develops. Seth MacFarlane has hinted that there are major revelations about the Griffin family that haven't been revealed yet, suggesting that even longtime fans don't know everything about these characters they've been watching for decades. The show that started as a simple animated sitcom has become a complex web of cultural commentary, personal expression, and industry politics that extends far beyond what appears on screen. Every episode carries the weight of canceled seasons, industry battles, and creative compromises that most viewers never suspect. Understanding this hidden lore doesn't just make Family Guy more interesting. It reveals how the entire landscape of adult animation has been shaped by the accidents, controversies, and creative battles that brought the Griffin family to life and kept them alive against all odds. Have you ever wondered what happens when your favorite animated characters don't just get blown up for laughs, but actually stay dead? Well, grab a cup of warm milk and get comfortable, because tonight we're diving deep into the surprisingly dark world of Family Guy's permanently deceased characters. And trust me, some of these deaths will shock you more than Peter's latest workplace accident. Now, before we start counting bodies, let's be real about something. Family Guy isn't exactly known for its restraint when it comes to cartoon violence. Characters get flattened, exploded, and dismembered on a weekly basis only to magically appear in the next scene like nothing happened. But every once in a while, the Grim Reaper actually keeps his receipts, and these characters never bounce back. Some were killed because fans couldn't stand them, others because their voice actors passed away in real life, and a few just got caught in the crossfire of Seth MacFarlane's twisted sense of humor. So dim those lights, settle into your most comfortable position, and let's explore every character that Family Guy has permanently sent to the great cartoon afterlife. Starting with the very first casualty that taught us this show wasn't messing around when it came to consequences. Our journey begins with Mr. Weed, Peter's original boss at the happy-go-lucky toy factory. This man first graced our screens way back in the pilot episode, catching Peter dead drunk at his workstation because apparently showing up sober was too much to ask. Mr. Weed was everything you'd expect from a factory supervisor dealing with Peter Griffin as an employee. Stern, professional, and probably questioning every career choice that led him to that moment. What made Mr. Weed fascinating wasn't just his no-nonsense attitude, but the running joke about his suspiciously theatrical mannerisms. The show never explicitly confirmed anything about his personal life, but his fabulous gestures and dramatic flair became a subtle recurring gag. Despite Peter's constant screw-ups, Mr. Weed kept giving him second chances, firing and rehiring him like it was some kind of workplace hobby. The irony is that this unusual loyalty to Peter ultimately sealed his fate. In the episode where everything went wrong, Peter decided to invite his boss over for dinner to make a good impression. Surprisingly, the evening started perfectly. Mr. Weed was genuinely impressed by Peter's home, family, and even Brian's ability to speak. He was so impressed that he offered Peter a promotion to head of toy development. That's when dinner took a deadly turn. Brian, shocked by this unexpected good news, started choking on a dinner roll. When Peter and Lois performed the Heimlich maneuver, the roll shot out of Brian's mouth like a projectile and landed directly in Mr. Weed's throat. And unlike the countless other times characters have faced mortal peril in this show, Mr. Weed actually died from choking. The funeral scene was classic Family Guy darkness. Mr. Weed left behind a videotaped will announcing that the happy-go-lucky toy factory would be demolished to make way for something called the homoerotic toy factory. It was absurd, tragic, and weirdly fitting for a character whose sexuality had been a running gag throughout his appearances. Moving from workplace fatalities to relationship drama, let's talk about Loretta Brown, Cleveland's ex-wife, who met her end in a way that perfectly summarized her entire character arc. Loretta was everything Cleveland wasn't. Where he was calm and soft-spoken, she was loud, demanding, and took no prisoners when it came to getting what she wanted. Their marriage started cracking when Quagmire's infamous inability to control himself led to an affair. During a fishing trip, a fish accidentally landed on Loretta's chest, and she took it as some kind of cosmic sign to sleep with the guy who caught it. Classic Family Guy logic, really. When Peter and Brian discovered this affair, they recognized Quagmire by his distinctive tattoo, leading to the most awkward revelation scene in television history. Cleveland's reaction to learning about the betrayal was so pathetically calm that it almost hurt to watch. Instead of rage or dramatic confrontation, he just apologized and accepted being kicked out of his own home. It wasn't until Peter and Lois called him out for being too passive that Cleveland finally found his spine and went after Quagmire. After their divorce was finalized, Loretta lived alone in a house on the hill, which sounds poetic until you remember this is Family Guy, and nothing stays peaceful for long. Her death came during one of Peter's elaborate pranks that somehow always managed to destroy Cleveland's property. This time, instead of Cleveland surviving the chaos like usual, Loretta got caught in the destruction and was crushed by falling debris. The reason behind Loretta's permanent exit was actually practical rather than narrative. Her voice actress, Alex Borstein, who also voices Lois, found Loretta's gravelly voice too difficult and painful to perform. Rather than recast the character, the writers decided to kill her off permanently, which honestly feels like the most Family Guy solution possible. Speaking of deaths that came out of nowhere, Horace's demise was particularly heartbreaking for fans of the Drunken Clam. This guy had been serving drinks to Peter, Quagmire, Joe, and Cleveland since the early seasons, surviving multiple near-death experiences that should have killed any normal bartender. He'd been shot, knocked unconscious, and even survived a fire, leading viewers to believe he was practically immortal. His luck finally ran out during a softball game between the Drunken Clam and Goldman's Pharmacy. Jerome, brought in as a ringer for Mort's team, was at bat when Horace tried to strike him out. Instead of a strikeout, Horace got struck down permanently. The episode revealed his death so casually that it almost felt cruel. But that's exactly the kind of dark humor Family Guy specializes in. The aftermath was even more devastating. The Drunken Clam was set to close permanently, which would have destroyed one of the show's most important locations. Peter tried everything to save the bar, but it was Jerome himself, the man who accidentally killed Horace, who stepped up to buy the establishment and keep it running. It was a surprisingly touching resolution to a tragic situation. Now let's talk about Peter's father, or at least the man he thought was his father for most of his life. Francis Griffin was the embodiment of strict Irish Catholic values, taken to an uncomfortable extreme. His dislike of Lois simply because she was Protestant created constant family tension, and his general disappointment in Peter was palpable in every scene they shared. When Francis retired and moved in with the Griffin family, he transformed their home into what looked like a Catholic gift shop explosion. Crucifixes appeared in every room. Religious imagery covered the walls, and the atmosphere became so oppressive that Peter actually convinced the Pope to visit and talk some sense into his father. The fact that Francis accused the Pope of going soft tells you everything you need to know about his personality. Francis met his end during Meg's birthday party, which was already going poorly because Peter was, as usual, being a complete embarrassment. While attempting one of his signature stupid stunts, Peter accidentally caused an accident that put Francis in the hospital. On his deathbed, Francis had some final words for his son that were both cruel and oddly accurate. He called Peter a fat, stinking drunk, which honestly wasn't wrong, but the timing made it particularly harsh. The revelation that Francis wasn't even Peter's biological father came during therapy sessions afterward. Peter discovered his real father was an Irishman named Mickey McFinnigan, who only accepted Peter after he proved himself in a drinking contest. It was a twisted validation of everything Francis had criticized about Peter's character. Peter's mother, Thelma Griffin, also received the permanent death treatment, though her passing was handled with less dramatic flair. She died of a stroke at the beginning of an episode that quickly shifted focus to Peter getting involved with an older woman, which was weird timing even by Family Guy standards. Thelma had always been a complex character, technically nicer than Francis, but carrying her own set of serious problems. She was a smoker, gambler, and alcoholic who had created several traumatic childhood memories for Peter through her neglectful and sometimes abusive behavior. Her habit of dropping bombshells on Peter whenever she visited made every appearance feel like an emotional landmine. The most shocking revelation came when Peter needed his birth certificate and discovered he wasn't born in America but in Mexico. Thelma had gone there to terminate her pregnancy after learning Peter's real father was an Irish drunk, but changed her mind after giving birth and smuggled baby Peter back to the United States. She then married Francis to give Peter a father figure, creating the lie that lasted Peter's entire childhood. Moving into the realm of characters that almost nobody mourned, Doug's death was announced so casually that it felt like an afterthought. This preschool rival of Stewie's had been a thorn in the baby's side for multiple episodes, representing everything Stewie hated about other children his age. Their rivalry started over playground politics and escalated into full-scale warfare, complete with campaign strategies and political maneuvering when Doug ran unopposed for snack captain. Stewie's terror at the thought of Doug gaining any kind of political experience, even at the preschool level, led to some of the show's most absurd storylines involving toddler espionage and election fraud. The episode ended with Stewie wearing the snack captain hat and casually mentioning that Doug had died in a commuter plane crash that morning. The matter-of-fact delivery and complete lack of emotional response from anyone made it clear that Doug's death was meant to be darkly comedic rather than tragic. Fans were actually relieved to see the annoying character permanently removed from the show. Bertram's death was far more dramatic and tied into one of Family Guy's most science fiction-heavy storylines. As Stewie's artificially conceived half-brother, Bertram represented a legitimate threat to Stewie's intellectual supremacy and served as his most formidable opponent throughout multiple episodes. Their first encounter inside Peter's reproductive system established them as equals in terms of intelligence and ruthlessness. After forming a temporary alliance based on their mutual hatred of Lois, the two babies eventually turned on each other in a conflict that escalated beyond playground politics into actual warfare involving time travel and assassination attempts. Bertram's master plan involved traveling back in time to eliminate one of Stewie's ancestors, Leonardo da Vinci, thereby erasing Stewie from existence entirely. The fact that he actually succeeded in killing da Vinci showed just how dangerous and competent Bertram could be when properly motivated. However, Stewie proved to be the superior strategist by tracking Bertram down through time and ending their rivalry permanently. The execution scene, where Stewie asks Bertram about his favorite bottled water before killing him, demonstrated the cold calculation that made Stewie such a compelling character. Unlike Doug's casual disposal, Bertram's death felt earned through multiple episodes of build-up and character development. The double murder episode stands out as one of Family Guy's most ambitious attempts at sustained storytelling across a full episode length. The mystery dinner party format allowed the writers to eliminate multiple characters while providing entertainment value through the whodunit structure. Muriel Goldman's death during this episode felt particularly cruel because she had never been anything more than a background character who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. As Mort's wife, she was essentially a female version of his neurotic personality, which made their relationship believable but didn't give her much individual characterization. The revelation that she had been exchanging mysterious messages with James Woods created false suspense about her potential involvement in the murders, but she was ultimately just another victim caught up in someone else's revenge scheme. Her funeral scene showed how little impact she had made on the community, with even her husband and son seeming relatively unaffected by her death. Diane Simmons represented the episode's true villain and most shocking revelation. As Tom Tucker's longtime co-anchor, she had been a background presence for years without showing any signs of homicidal tendencies. Her transformation from professional newswoman to calculating murderer demonstrated how deeply personal rejections and professional disappointments could push someone over the edge. The motive behind her killing spree was painfully relatable in its pettiness. Being dumped by James Woods for a younger woman and facing replacement by a younger co-anchor as she turned 40 created the perfect storm of humiliation and desperation. Her methodical approach to framing Tom Tucker for the murders showed intelligence and planning that made her genuinely dangerous. Diane's final confrontation with Lois provided the classic villain monologue moment where all her motivations were revealed. The irony of being killed by Stewie, a baby, after successfully eliminating multiple adult targets added the kind of dark humor that Family Guy specialized in creating. Patty Tanager's death was perhaps the most satisfying for viewers who had endured his annoying catchphrase and constant attempts to start fights over nothing. This short, aggressive man represented everything irritating about people who create drama where none needs to exist. His role as the boss of a car dealership where Brian worked temporarily showed that his obnoxious personality wasn't limited to casual encounters. Even in professional settings, he couldn't resist making inappropriate comments and stirring up unnecessary conflict with his employees and customers. The poetic justice of his death came when he tried to start a fight with someone operating a military tank. His final words, maintaining his catchphrase even while facing certain doom, showed that he was committed to his obnoxious personality right until the end. The audience's reaction to his death was overwhelmingly positive, proving that sometimes characters are specifically designed to be eliminated. The deaths of Angela and Mayor Adam West carried more emotional weight because they were tied to the real-life passing of their voice actors. These weren't creative decisions made for storyline purposes, but necessary responses to losing the talented people who brought these characters to life. Angela's character arc, from hostile supervisor to lonely woman seeking connection, provided some of Peter's most uncomfortable workplace storylines. Her sexual harassment of Peter while threatening his job security created situations that were both comedically awkward and genuinely problematic by today's standards. Her backstory, revealing years of loneliness and isolation, made her desperate actions more understandable without excusing them. The resolution where Peter dresses up to take her on a fake date showed his capacity for kindness even when dealing with someone who had made his life difficult. Carrie Fisher's death in real life meant that Angela's character had to be written out permanently. The funeral scene in her honor served as both a farewell to the character and a tribute to the actress who had voiced her. Peter's mistake of ending up at the wrong funeral added typical Family Guy humor to what was otherwise a genuinely touching moment. Mayor Adam West's death marked the end of one of the show's most beloved recurring characters. His wonderfully insane personality and possibly corrupt political practices had provided countless moments of absurd humor throughout his long tenure as Quahog's mayor. The real Adam West's connection to his animated counterpart made the character feel more authentic and grounded despite his completely unrealistic behavior and dialogue. His brief challenge from Lois during her political phase showed that even incompetent leadership was preferable to the corruption that inevitably followed. His marriage to Carol Pewterschmidt, Lois's sister, created additional family connections that made his death more personally impactful for the main characters. The tribute episode where Brian petitioned to rename the high school after Mayor West provided proper closure for a character who had been part of the show's fabric for over 16 seasons. The ghost appearance at the end where Mayor West saves Brian from falling off a cliff gave the character one final moment of heroism and showed that death couldn't completely remove him from the Family Guy universe. His replacement by Wild West as mayor acknowledged that the character was irreplaceable while allowing the show to continue. These permanent deaths in Family Guy serve multiple purposes beyond simple shock value. They demonstrate that actions can have genuine consequences, even in a cartoon universe known for its resurrection-running gags. Some characters were eliminated because they had served their narrative purpose, others because fan reaction made their continued presence counterproductive, and some because real-world circumstances forced the writers' hands. The variety in how these deaths were handled shows the range of Family Guy's storytelling capabilities. From casual mentions that treat death as an afterthought to elaborate murder mystery episodes that build tension across an entire episode, the show has found multiple ways to permanently remove characters while maintaining its signature dark humor. The emotional impact of these deaths varies significantly based on character development and audience attachment. Long-running characters like Mayor West and Horace created genuine sadness among fans, while annoying characters like Doug and Patty Tanager were celebrated in their passing. This range of reactions demonstrates how effectively the show had developed distinct personalities for even its minor recurring characters. What makes these permanent deaths particularly interesting is how they contrast with Family Guy's usual approach to cartoon violence. The show regularly features deaths that are immediately reversed or ignored, making the permanent ones stand out as genuinely significant events. When a character stays dead in this universe, it carries extra weight, because viewers know it's not the norm. The practical reasons behind some of these deaths, such as voice actor availability or fan reaction, show how external factors can influence creative decisions in long-running animated series. The writers have generally handled these necessary eliminations with appropriate respect while maintaining the show's comedic tone. Looking back at this collection of permanently deceased characters reveals the evolution of Family Guy's storytelling over its many seasons. Earlier deaths, like Mr. Weed, were often accidental consequences of the show's chaotic humor, while later deaths, like those in the murder mystery episode, showed more deliberate narrative planning. The show's willingness to permanently eliminate characters demonstrates confidence in its ability to create new sources of humor and conflict without relying on the same recurring personalities indefinitely. This creative flexibility has helped Family Guy maintain freshness across its extended run, while still honoring the contributions of departed characters. These deaths also serve as reminders that even in the most outrageous fictional universes, some actions cannot be undone. They provide moments of genuine consequence in a show that otherwise operates on cartoon logic, where nothing permanent ever happens to the main characters. So there you have it, fellow insomniacs and Family Guy enthusiasts. A complete tour through the surprisingly extensive graveyard of characters who didn't make it back from their final Family Guy appearances. From workplace accidents to murder mysteries, from natural causes to tank-related incidents, the show has found creative ways to permanently remove characters while maintaining its signature blend of dark humor and unexpected heart. Sweet dreams, and remember, in the world of Family Guy, even cartoon death can sometimes be permanent. Hey, sleepyheads, if you're settling in for the night and need something to drift off to, you've come to the right place. Tonight we're diving into the wonderfully weird world of Family Guy, with some absolutely wild facts that'll either put you to sleep or keep you up, wondering how the heck this show got away with some of this stuff. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll have enough random Family Guy knowledge to impress literally no one at parties. But hey, that's what we're here for. Let's start with something that'll blow your mind. Did you know that Peter Griffin has technically been married to Lois longer in real time than some actual married couples have been together? The show premiered in 1999, which means Peter and Lois have been cartoon married for over 25 years now. That's longer than a lot of Hollywood marriages last, and considering all the ridiculous stuff Peter puts Lois through, it's honestly impressive she hasn't left him for someone with at least 2 functioning brain cells. Speaking of Peter's questionable decision-making skills, here's a fact that might make you question everything you thought you knew about the show. Peter Griffin has actually cheated on Lois multiple times throughout the series, but not always in the way you'd expect. There was that whole episode where Peter literally got injected with what the doctors called a gay gene during a medical experiment. Now, I know what you're thinking, and yes, this is as ridiculous as it sounds. Peter needed money for medical bills, saw an ad for volunteers for medical research, and being Peter, he didn't ask any questions before signing up. The doctors at this research facility were apparently working on some kind of gene therapy, and Peter ended up getting injected with this experimental serum that was supposed to make him gay. The kicker? He only did it because they offered him $125. That's right, Peter Griffin's sexuality was temporarily altered, for the price of a decent vacuum cleaner. Only on Family Guy would someone's entire identity shift because of what amounts to pocket change. But here's where it gets really interesting. Once the serum kicked in, Peter didn't just become gay, he became like stereotypically gay. We're talking about a guy who suddenly knew all the best brunch spots in town and started making homemade muffins. Lois was initially upset about the whole situation until she tasted those muffins, and then she was suddenly okay with having a gay husband. It's like she discovered the secret to getting Peter to actually contribute to household duties was a medical experiment gone wrong. The really wild part is that Peter ended up getting a boyfriend named Scott, and he was completely ready to leave his entire family for this guy. Peter literally told Lois he was leaving her for his new soulmate, packed his bags, and started living his best gay life. They went to fancy restaurants, which is probably more romantic attention than Lois had gotten in years, and Peter was genuinely happy. The effects were supposed to wear off eventually, but nobody knew when. The doctor said it could be anywhere from a week to a year, which is quite possibly the most unhelpful medical diagnosis in television history. Meanwhile, Brian and Stewie decided they needed to fix this situation, so they sent Peter to what was essentially conversion therapy, which obviously didn't work. Scott got worried when Peter disappeared for 2 days and showed up at the Griffin house looking for him. When Lois found out what Brian had done, she wasn't happy, and they all rushed to rescue Peter from this ridiculous straight camp. Here's the kicker, though. When Peter and Scott were finally reunited, Scott had a special surprise planned. Remember how Peter had mentioned that his ultimate fantasy was to have an 11-way? Well, Scott made that happen. Can you imagine being in Peter's shoes when the effects finally wore off after 2.5 weeks? The man went from living his best life to probably needing serious therapy. But that wasn't even the only time Peter stepped out on his marriage. There was another incident involving his special mirrored sunglasses that accidentally revealed he was getting calls from a secret boyfriend. Peter was playing poker, and because he's Peter, he was wearing these ridiculous sunglasses that basically showed everyone his cards. But that wasn't even the stupidest part. When his phone rang during the game, everyone could see in his sunglasses that the contact was saved as his secret boyfriend. The man literally had no concept of how to keep a secret. Peter's excuse for taking the call? He told everyone it was his wife. Smooth, Peter. Real smooth. This is the same guy who somehow managed to maintain an entire second family in Chicago. That's right. Peter Griffin had a whole other life where he pretended to be the mother of someone else's children. He would tell his real family he was going on business trips, fly to Chicago, change clothes in a taxi, and then show up at this other house where a bunch of kids would greet him like he was their mom. I have so many questions about this arrangement that I don't think I want answered. Like, whose kids were those? How did this living situation even come about? And most importantly, how did Peter manage to keep this secret when he couldn't even hide a boyfriend's contact information on his phone? The man's inconsistency is honestly impressive. Then there was the time Peter got amnesia and forgot he was married to Lois entirely. This happened when the Griffin family somehow ended up on Family Feud, because of course they did. Peter got into a fight with Richard Dawson, which honestly seems about right for Peter's personality, and ended up flying headfirst into a table. The impact gave him complete amnesia, and he had no idea who Lois or his kids were. The doctor said Peter's memory could come back anywhere from days to years, which again, super helpful medical advice. Lois tried everything to jog his memory, including showing him old home movies, but Peter just got distracted by random things in the background. The man's attention span was somehow even worse with amnesia than it was normally. Here's where things got weird, though. Peter might not have remembered being married to Lois, but some things about his personality remained intact, like the fact that he was a complete pervert. He started creeping on Lois, not realizing she was actually his wife and that he could just ask her to sleep with him. When Lois explained the situation, Peter was over the moon. He basically got to lose his virginity all over again, except this time with someone who actually knew what they were doing. But Peter's amnesia brain didn't quite understand the boundaries of marriage. He seemed to think that if he could sleep with Lois, he could probably sleep with anyone in the house. This led to Lois having to explain, in the most awkward way possible, that he couldn't have relations with the kids. That's a sentence no parent should ever have to say. But then again, this is Peter Griffin we're talking about. The amnesia situation got even more complicated when Peter decided he didn't want to be married anymore. He thought the whole concept was stupid and decided to become a bachelor. So suddenly, Lois and the kids were kicked out of their own house and had to move to a crappy apartment in the city, while Peter lived it up as a single man. He was throwing parties, bringing home different women every night, and generally living like he was 25 years old instead of a middle-aged father of 3. The really messed up part is that Peter got his memory back after about a day, but he decided to keep pretending he had amnesia because he was enjoying the bachelor lifestyle too much. Meanwhile, Quagmire was making moves on Lois in her vulnerable state, and Brian had to rush to tell Peter what was happening. Peter finally confessed that his memory had returned, but only because he didn't want Quagmire sleeping with his wife. The fact that he was willing to abandon his family for random hookups but drew the line at Quagmire says a lot about Peter's priorities. One of the most bizarre cheating incidents involved Peter falling in love with a cardboard cutout. This wasn't some quick gag either. Peter literally brought home a cardboard stand-up of model Kathy Ireland and treated it like a real relationship. He introduced the cutout to his kids, took it out to dinner, and somehow managed to have what he considered a physical relationship with it. The logistics of this situation are something I don't think anyone wants to think too hard about. Peter was so committed to this cardboard romance that he told his kids Kathy was their new mom. Lois was still living in the house and honestly seemed pretty unbothered by the whole thing. She figured it would blow over eventually, and she was probably right, except that Chris decided to take Kathy into his room for his own purposes. When Peter found out, he was so angry that he shook the cutout, and her cardboard head literally fell off, ending the relationship in the most anticlimactic way possible. The show also had this meta episode where they pretended to show behind-the-scenes footage of the Family Guy cast, and in this fake documentary, we found out that Peter was supposedly cheating on Lois with an 18-year-old intern. When confronted about the naked pictures on his phone, Peter's excuse was that his phone number used to belong to the intern's ex-boyfriend, so the pictures were sent by mistake. Then, when pressed further, he claimed it was the cloud's fault. The cloud people. Peter Griffin blamed technology for his infidelity. What made this even worse was that Lois revealed this had happened 5 times, and some of the pictures actually had Peter in them too. At this point, you have to wonder about Lois's self-respect, but then again, she's been putting up with Peter's nonsense for over 2 decades, so maybe she's just developed an immunity to his stupidity. Throughout all of these incidents, there's this running theme of Peter having absolutely no understanding of how relationships work. Whether he's temporarily gay, suffering from amnesia, or falling in love with cardboard, he consistently makes choices that any reasonable person would recognize as relationship ending. Yet somehow, Lois always takes him back, and they return to their dysfunctional but apparently unbreakable marriage. The fascinating thing about Peter's various infidelities is how they reflect different aspects of his character. When he's gay, he becomes more thoughtful and domestic. When he has amnesia, his base instincts take over. When he's with the cardboard cutout, it shows his complete detachment from reality. Each scenario reveals something different about what makes Peter tick, even if none of it makes him a better husband. What's really interesting is how the show treats these situations as comedy rather than serious relationship problems. In real life, most of these incidents would result in divorce, therapy, or at minimum, some serious conversations about boundaries and commitment. But in the Family Guy universe, they're just Tuesday. Peter can maintain a secret family, inject himself with experimental drugs, or forget his wife exists entirely, and by the end of the episode, everything goes back to normal. This reflects the show's overall approach to continuity and consequences. Family Guy operates in a world where actions don't have lasting impact, where characters can experience major life changes that are completely forgotten by the next episode. It's part of what allows the show to push boundaries and explore ridiculous scenarios without worrying about long-term narrative consistency. The fact that Peter has cheated on Lois in so many different ways also highlights the show's commitment to mining comedy from uncomfortable situations. Seth MacFarlane and the writing team seem to delight in finding new ways to make Peter an even worse husband, while somehow keeping him sympathetic enough that audiences don't completely turn against him. And there you have it, folks. Peter Griffin's extensive history of marital infidelity, from gay gene experiments to cardboard cutout romances. Sweet dreams. And try not to think too hard about the logistics of any of this. If you enjoyed learning about Peter's questionable relationship choices, make sure to subscribe for more random animated facts that serve no practical purpose but might help you fall asleep. Until next time, keep it weird, Keep it random, and remember that somewhere out there, Peter Griffin is probably doing something that would end most marriages, but will be completely forgotten by next episode. What if I told you that one cartoon dad has a higher body count than most movie villains? Today we're diving deep into the chaotic world of Peter Griffin and counting every single person this animated maniac has eliminated. Trust me, the numbers are absolutely insane. Most people think Peter Griffin is just a lovable goofball who makes stupid mistakes. But when you actually sit down and track his actions across hundreds of Family Guy episodes, a terrifying pattern emerges. This isn't just some clumsy dad bumbling through life. This is a walking disaster zone who leaves destruction wherever he goes. I spent weeks combing through every Family Guy episode, taking notes, rewinding scenes, and meticulously documenting each incident. What I discovered shocked me. Peter Griffin isn't just accidentally dangerous. He's legitimately one of the most prolific killers in television history. And the worst part? He never faces any real consequences. Let's start from the very beginning with Peter's first confirmed elimination. In only the second episode of the entire series, Peter runs down the Roadrunner from Looney Tunes while driving. Just flattens the poor bird completely. When asked if he hit something, Peter casually dismisses it and keeps driving. That casual attitude toward taking a life? It sets the tone for everything that follows. The very next episode, things escalate dramatically. A tour bus pulls up to the Griffin house, and Peter completely loses his mind. He grabs a shotgun and opens fire on the entire vehicle. 3 people eliminated just like that. His reaction to seeing strangers at his door was immediate violence. No questions asked. No attempt at communication. Just grab a weapon and start shooting. Then there's the hospital incident that really showcases Peter's dangerous incompetence. Somehow this man was allowed to work as a doctor, which should have been a red flag for everyone involved. During what appears to be a routine procedure, Peter's negligence directly leads to a patient's death. The fact that he was even permitted near medical equipment shows a serious breakdown in the system. But Peter's killing spree really picks up steam when he temporarily takes over Death's job. With supernatural powers at his disposal, Peter becomes exponentially more dangerous. He kills 2 airline pilots mid-flight simply by touching them. Thousands of passengers could have died if not for quick thinking from another character who managed to land the plane. Peter's reaction to nearly causing a massive aviation disaster? He jokes about needing mittens. The pattern becomes clear early on. Peter has zero regard for human life and even less understanding of consequences. When tasked with simple babysitting duties, he leaves an infant to drown in a bathtub. His parenting instincts are so fundamentally broken that he can't even keep a baby alive for one evening. Speaking of children, Peter's relationship with kids is consistently disturbing. When he briefly works as a nanny dressed up like Mary Poppins, 2 children end up dead and hidden under a bed. These weren't accidents or misunderstandings. Peter's presence in any childcare situation inevitably leads to tragedy. But the really chilling moments come when Peter turns his violence toward his own family. In one episode, his negligence with home repairs leads to carbon monoxide poisoning that kills Lois, Chris, and Meg. Even though they're miraculously fine in the next episode, Peter's actions directly cause their deaths. A husband and father who accidentally kills his entire family should be traumatized for life. Peter just moves on like nothing happened. The mob-style execution of Brian over some leftover food shows Peter's capacity for cold-blooded murder. When his dog eats his chicken and drinks his cream soda, Peter responds with gangster-level violence. The casual way he eliminates a family member over such trivial matters reveals the true depth of his sociopathic tendencies. Peter's parenting philosophy seems to involve extreme violence as conflict resolution. When his daughter faces bullying at school, instead of speaking to teachers or parents, Peter takes matters into his own hands. The bully doesn't survive the encounter. Later, when presenting what he thinks is the bully's head to his son, Peter admits he got the wrong kid entirely. He murdered an innocent deaf child by mistake and shows no remorse whatsoever. The axe murder of Cleveland represents a turning point where Peter's violence becomes increasingly graphic and disturbing. This isn't cartoon slapstick anymore. This is genuine horror movie material. The casual way Peter wields deadly weapons against friends and neighbors shows a complete break from reality and basic human decency. From this point forward, Peter's methods become increasingly brutal, and his body count starts climbing exponentially. The chainsaw massacres alone account for dozens of victims. Peter goes from house to house like a serial killer, methodically eliminating anyone in his path. The fact that he seems to enjoy this level of violence makes it even more disturbing. One of the most senseless killings involves Peter murdering a child just to steal a jet ski. When his family points out they're literally standing next to their boat, Peter ignores them and commits homicide anyway. This isn't about necessity or even twisted logic. This is pure evil masked as comedy. The restaurant incident where Peter kills a woman named Erica while trying to prove his cooking skills demonstrates how his ego and incompetence create deadly combinations. Peter's need to show off constantly puts innocent people in mortal danger. Peter's involvement in sports inevitably leads to casualties. Every athletic activity he participates in somehow results in someone's death. Whether it's shot put, treasure hunting, or any other recreational activity, Peter transforms harmless fun into lethal encounters. The drunk driving incidents reveal another layer of Peter's criminal behavior. He openly admits to calculating exactly how much alcohol he can consume while still being able to drive. This premeditated approach to endangering others shows Peter knows his actions are dangerous, but simply doesn't care about the consequences. The Boston Marathon Massacre stands out as one of Peter's most heinous acts. Running down dozens of innocent runners during a major sporting event crosses the line from accidental violence into mass murder territory. The casualty count from this single incident rivals actual terrorist attacks. Peter's racism leads to deadly encounters as well. His casual bigotry creates situations where innocent people lose their lives simply for existing in Peter's presence. The Anthropology store incident perfectly captures how Peter's prejudices fuel his violent tendencies. When Peter briefly becomes death incarnate, his kill count skyrockets through supernatural means. Having the literal power of life and death in Peter's hands is like giving a nuclear weapon to a toddler. The pilots who die simply from Peter's touch represent just the beginning of the carnage. The hospital bombings showcase Peter's evolution into full-scale terrorism. Destroying entire medical facilities because he disagrees with vaccines makes Peter an anti-science extremist willing to commit mass murder for his beliefs. The estimated casualty counts from these attacks reach into the hundreds. Peter's accidental involvement with actual terrorists leads to multiple explosive incidents. His friendship with a terrorist operative results in several bombings throughout the city. Even when Peter tries to do the right thing by helping authorities, he ends up triggering more explosions that kill dozens of innocent people. The Secret Society incident demonstrates Peter's capacity for large-scale destruction. Burning down an entire facility housing historical documents leads to hundreds of deaths. Peter's inability to consider consequences means every action he takes has the potential for massive collateral damage. The presidential fight with Donald Trump represents the peak of Peter's destructive potential. Their brawl triggers nuclear missile launches that devastate multiple population centers. The casualty count from this single incident reaches into the thousands. Peter literally causes acts of war through his inability to control his temper. But none of Peter's individual acts of violence compare to his ongoing feud with Ernie the Giant Chicken. This running conflict has resulted in more deaths and destruction than actual wars. Every encounter between these two characters leaves dozens of innocent bystanders dead. Their first major battle destroys multiple vehicles, causes plane crashes, and brings down entire buildings. The Ferry wheel incident alone accounts for hundreds of casualties as the massive structure rolls through populated areas. Their fights aren't contained conflicts between two individuals. They're citywide disasters that claim enormous numbers of innocent lives. The cruise ship battle represents the most destructive single incident in their ongoing war. When their fight moves into the engine room, they lose control of a massive passenger vessel that crashes into a major city. The resulting destruction levels multiple city blocks and kills hundreds of people. This single incident qualifies as one of the worst maritime disasters in history. Their time travel battle creates paradoxes that threaten the fabric of reality itself. When Peter and Ernie use time manipulation technology to continue their fight across multiple historical periods, they create cascading effects that alter the course of human history. The scientist who created the time machine becomes an early casualty of their temporal warfare. The NASA facility destruction shows how their conflict has escalated beyond Earth itself. Their space battle crashes back to the planet and destroys an ocean oil rig, adding environmental disaster to their already impressive list of crimes against humanity. The reverse time sequence battle creates some of the most confusing and deadly encounters in their entire conflict. When everything starts happening backwards, the destruction becomes even more widespread and incomprehensible. Plane crashes, building collapses, and mass casualties all blend together in a chaotic symphony of violence. When you calculate the total casualties from just the Peter versus Ernie conflicts, the number reaches nearly 1,500 deaths. This means half of Peter's entire body count comes from a single ongoing dispute that started over an expired coupon. The fact that such trivial origins led to such massive destruction perfectly encapsulates Peter's character. The crossover episode with The Simpsons showcases Peter's ability to bring his destructive tendencies to other fictional universes. His fight with Homer Simpson levels significant portions of Springfield and adds another 100 casualties to his count. Even when visiting other shows, Peter cannot help but create mayhem and death. Throughout all of these incidents, certain patterns emerge that make Peter's behavior even more disturbing. He shows no remorse for any of his actions. He never learns from his mistakes or attempts to modify his behavior. Most importantly, he faces no meaningful consequences for any of his crimes. The legal system in Peter's universe seems completely incapable of holding him accountable. Despite committing mass murder on multiple occasions, Peter continues to walk free and repeat his destructive patterns. This creates a world where violence has no consequences and human life has no value. Peter's family and friends enable his behavior by treating his mass murder sprees as minor inconveniences rather than serious crimes. When someone consistently kills innocent people, the appropriate response is not to laugh it off and wait for the next episode. The normalization of Peter's violence makes everyone around him complicit in his crimes. The media within Peter's world also fails to adequately report on his actions. Despite causing multiple disasters that should dominate news cycles for months, Peter's crimes are quickly forgotten and life returns to normal. This unrealistic portrayal of consequences sends dangerous messages about accountability and justice. When you add up every death directly attributable to Peter Griffin's actions, the final count reaches approximately 2,800 people. This makes him one of the most prolific killers in entertainment history. For context, this body count exceeds many actual historical mass murderers and rivals casualty figures from major military conflicts. The fact that this level of violence is presented as comedy raises serious questions about desensitization to violence in media. When mass murder becomes a punchline, society loses important moral boundaries that separate acceptable behavior from criminal acts. Peter Griffin represents the logical extreme of consequence-free violence in entertainment. His character demonstrates what happens when someone with destructive tendencies faces no accountability for their actions. The result is escalating violence that eventually reaches genocidal proportions. The most disturbing aspect of Peter's character is how his violence is often portrayed as justified or at least understandable. Whether defending his family, pursuing his goals, or simply satisfying his curiosity, Peter's murderous actions are presented within contexts that make them seem reasonable to viewers. This normalization of extreme violence has real-world implications for how audiences process and respond to actual violence in their daily lives. When fictional characters commit mass murder without consequences, it becomes easier to dismiss real violence as less serious than it actually is. The Peter Griffin phenomenon also reveals how comedy can be used to mask serious social problems. By presenting his violent tendencies as humorous character quirks, rather than serious mental health issues, the show avoids confronting the deeper implications of his behavior. In conclusion, Peter Griffin's body count of 2,800 people makes him one of the deadliest characters in television history. His casual approach to mass murder, combined with the complete lack of consequences he faces, creates a character who embodies the worst aspects of unchecked violence and social irresponsibility. While Family Guy presents his actions as comedy, the sheer scale of death and destruction he causes reveals a character who belongs in prison rather than primetime television. Hey there, night owls and Family Guy fanatics. If you're here looking for some sleepy time content about everyone's favorite animated chaos, you've come to the right place. Tonight we're diving deep into the wild world of Quahog with some fascinating Family Guy facts that'll ease you into dreamland. So grab your pillow, get comfortable, and let's explore the bizarre universe that Seth MacFarlane created. Picture this. It's 1999, and a young animator has just pitched what would become one of television's most controversial and beloved animated series. Seth MacFarlane was only 25 years old when he created Family Guy, making him one of the youngest creators in television history to have his own primetime animated show. The pilot episode cost a mere $50,000 to produce, which is practically pocket change by today's animation standards. MacFarlane not only created the show, but also voices 4 of the main characters, including Peter Griffin, Brian the dog, Stewie, the scowling baby, and the perverted neighbor, Glenn Quagmire. Speaking of voices, here's something that might surprise you. The voice of Meg Griffin has changed over the years, but not in the way you might think. Originally, Lacey Chabert from Mean Girls fame voiced the teenage daughter during the first season and most of the second season. However, due to scheduling conflicts with her other projects, Mila Kunis took over the role starting in season 2. Interestingly, Kunis was initially hesitant about taking the job because she thought it was just a temporary gig. Little did she know, she'd be voicing the character for over 2 decades. The show's production history is almost as chaotic as the Griffin family itself. Family Guy was actually canceled not once, but twice by Fox. The first cancellation happened after the second season in 2000. Then it was brought back for a third season, only to be canceled again in 2002. What saved the show was something unprecedented at the time. DVD sales and reruns on Adult Swim were so successful that Fox decided to resurrect the series in 2005. This made Family Guy the first canceled show in television history to be brought back primarily due to DVD sales and cable reruns. Let's talk about the town of Quahog for a moment. While it's fictional, MacFarlane based it on his own hometown of Kent, Connecticut. Many of the locations in the show are inspired by real places from his childhood. The Drunken Clam, where Peter and his friends hang out, was inspired by a real bar in Kent. Even some of the street names in Quahog are taken directly from streets in MacFarlane's hometown. This personal touch gives the show an authentic feel, despite its outrageous storylines. Here's a fact that might keep you up thinking about the complexity of animation. Each episode of Family Guy takes approximately 10 months to complete from start to finish. The process begins with the writers creating the script, which can take several weeks. Then comes the voice, recording, followed by animatic creation, character design, background painting, and finally, animation. A single 22-minute episode requires approximately 15,000 individual drawings. That's nearly 700 drawings per minute of finished animation. Brian the dog is arguably one of the most complex characters in animation history. He's an intellectual who drinks martinis, writes novels, and has strong political opinions. But here's something fascinating about his character development. MacFarlane originally intended for Brian to be more of a traditional pet character, but as the show progressed, Brian became increasingly humanized. The character serves as MacFarlane's voice for political commentary and social criticism. Brian's pretentious personality and liberal viewpoints often reflect McFarlane's own beliefs, making the dog essentially the creator's animated alter ego. The show's cutaway gags, those random flashback scenes that have nothing to do with the main plot, were inspired by McFarlane's love of classic comedy. He drew inspiration from shows like The Carol Burnett Show and Saturday Night Live. These cutaways became one of Family Guy's most distinctive features, allowing the writers to include jokes and references that wouldn't fit into the main storyline. Some episodes contain up to 15 different cutaway gags, each requiring its own mini-production cycle. Stewie Griffin's character underwent one of the most dramatic transformations in television history. In the early seasons, Stewie was portrayed as an evil genius baby bent on world domination and matricide. His primary goal was killing his mother, Lois. However, as the series progressed, the writers shifted his character toward being more flamboyantly gay and less homicidal. This transformation wasn't planned from the beginning, but evolved naturally as the writers discovered what worked best for the character's comedy potential. The show's musical numbers deserve special recognition. McFarlane, who studied animation at the Rhode Island School of Design, is also an accomplished singer and musician. Many of Family Guy's musical sequences showcase his talents, particularly the big band and jazz numbers. The episode Road to Rhode Island featured a musical number that was so well received it spawned an entire series of road episodes pairing Brian and Stewie together. These musical interludes often require months of additional production time and specialized animators who can synchronize character movements with complex musical arrangements. Here's something about the show's writing process that's quite remarkable. The Family Guy writer's room operates differently from most television shows. Instead of having a traditional hierarchy, McFarlane encourages a collaborative environment where any writer can pitch jokes or storylines. The writers often compete to see who can come up with the most outrageous or offensive joke, pushing the boundaries of what's acceptable on television. This competitive atmosphere has resulted in some of the show's most memorable and controversial moments. The character of Peter Griffin was originally going to be named Justin Peter Griffin, but McFarlane shortened it to just Peter. The character's appearance and personality were inspired by a security guard McFarlane knew at his college. Peter's distinctive laugh, that wheezing giggle that fans love or hate, was actually improvised by McFarlane during early recording sessions. The laugh became so popular with the production team that they decided to make it a permanent part of the character. Cleveland Brown, Peter's neighbor and friend, was given his own spin-off show called The Cleveland Show, which ran for 4 seasons from 2009 to 2013. Interestingly, the character was created as a way to add diversity to the main cast, but McFarlane has admitted that writing for Cleveland was challenging because he didn't want to rely on racial stereotypes for humor. The character's calm, measured personality served as a counterbalance to Peter's chaotic energy. The show's animation style has evolved significantly over the years. Early episodes had a more rough, hand-drawn quality that reflected the show's limited budget. As the series became more successful, the animation became more polished and computer-assisted. However, McFarlane insisted on maintaining certain stylistic choices, like the character's simple designs and limited color palette, to preserve the show's original charm. Family Guy has featured an impressive roster of celebrity guest stars over the years. These appearances range from brief cameos to full character roles. What's interesting is that many celebrities specifically request to appear on the show because of its cultural impact. The writers often create characters specifically tailored to the guest star's personality or public image, resulting in some surprisingly authentic performances. The show's controversial content has led to numerous censorship battles with network executives and standards departments. McFarlane has stated in interviews that approximately 10% of each script gets cut or modified due to content concerns. Some jokes that are deemed too offensive are replaced with alternate versions, while others are moved to the DVD releases as deleted scenes. This constant push and pull between creative freedom and broadcast standards has actually improved the show's writing, forcing the creators to be more clever with their humor. Here's a production detail that animation fans will appreciate. Family Guy uses a technique called limited animation, which means characters are drawn with simplified movements to save time and money. However, the show occasionally breaks this rule for special sequences. particularly musical numbers or action scenes. These moments of full animation stand out dramatically and create a more cinematic feel. The Griffin family house has become iconic in its own right. The interior layout has remained remarkably consistent throughout the series, which is unusual for animated shows. Most animated series change room layouts as needed for specific jokes or storylines, but Family Guy maintains architectural continuity. The house was designed to feel like a real middle-class American home, complete with believable room proportions and logical furniture placement. Quagmire's character represents one of the show's most problematic elements, but also demonstrates McFarlane's willingness to explore uncomfortable territory for comedy. The character's predatory behavior toward women would be completely unacceptable in live action, but the animated format allows the show to examine toxic masculinity through exaggeration and absurdity. It's a delicate balance that doesn't always work, but it shows the unique possibilities of animated comedy. The show's timeline is intentionally confusing and contradictory. Characters reference current events and pop culture from different decades within the same episode. This temporal flexibility allows the writers to make jokes about any topic regardless of when it occurred. Stewie remains a baby despite the series spanning over 20 years, and other characters don't age either. This suspended animation of time keeps the show perpetually contemporary. Family Guy's influence on internet culture cannot be overstated. The show was one of the first television series to embrace meme culture, with countless clips and quotes becoming viral sensations. The cutaway gags are perfectly suited for short-form internet content, and many viewers discover the show through social media clips rather than traditional television viewing. The voice acting process for Family Guy is quite different from other animated shows. Most animated series record voices individually, but Family Guy often records multiple actors together to capture natural conversation rhythms. This technique results in more spontaneous performances and allows for improvisation that wouldn't be possible with solo recording sessions. McFarlane has stated that he originally intended Family Guy to run for only a few seasons, but the show's success has extended its life far beyond his initial vision. This longevity has allowed for character development and storyline complexity that wasn't possible in the early seasons. Characters have been able to grow and change in ways that reflect real human development, even within the show's absurdist framework. The show's merchandise empire extends far beyond typical television tie-ins. Family Guy products range from clothing and accessories to home goods and collectibles. The Stewie Griffin character alone has spawned hundreds of different products, making him one of the most marketable animated characters of the 21st century. As we drift towards sleep, it's worth reflecting on how Family Guy changed television animation forever. The show proved that adult-oriented animated comedy could be successful in prime time, paving the way for shows like American Dad, Bob's Burgers, and Rick and Morty. Its irreverent humor and willingness to tackle controversial subjects opened doors for creative freedom that didn't exist before. The Griffin family may be dysfunctional, chaotic, and often morally questionable, but they've provided millions of viewers with laughter, comfort, and escapism. Whether you love them or hate them, they've become part of our cultural landscape, a shared reference point that brings people together through humor. So, as you close your eyes tonight, maybe you'll dream of Quahog, where dogs can talk, babies can build time machines, and anything is possible. Sweet dreams. And remember, in the words of Peter Griffin, sometimes the most important thing is just to keep laughing, even when life gets crazy. Sleep well, Family Guy fans. Tomorrow is another day in the wonderful world of animation, full of new jokes, new characters, and new reasons to appreciate the art of storytelling through laughter. Good night, and thanks for joining us on this journey through the facts and trivia of one of television's most enduring animated families.